assume you can all see my screen. Yep.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, I think it's 7 minutes past, so I think we should start. So thank you everyone for joining the Manchester Dynamics and Power Platform user group for Manchester. Although quick survey of the attendees, not many are actually from Manchester, which is great. So I don't know how many of you attended these user groups before. It might be your first. If so, welcome. If you're a seasoned user group attendee, thank you for continuing to support them. So today we've got two, what I think, really interesting conversations and talks covering Power Apps, UI and UX, and then we've also got a session on Power Pages. Obviously, one of the new kids on the block for the Power Platform. So it'd be interesting to understand, what the take is on Nick's take on Power Pages. What is it? What does it do? What are the use cases? What it isn't is probably also another one, because I think probably lots of people have got assumptions of what Power Pages is, and I'm sure Nick will disagree with some of their beliefs. So welcome Kristine, welcome Nick. Thank you for joining. So we've got, obviously, normally if we do this face to face, we'll have a break, we'll have pizza, and we'll have a chat. Obviously, we're not going to do that online, so not too sure on timings. We may finish a little bit earlier. We may overrun, depends on questions and whatnot. But we've got enough time to have Q&As. So I would welcome anyone who's got a question. Just raise your hand in Teams, and I'm sure Kristine and Nick will be able to get round to answer them questions. I'm sure the presentation is going to be fantastic. But more often than not with these sort of things, it's always great to have the questions and go off on a little bit of a tangent and come back. So we're going to start with introductions. Kristine's going to take to the floor and talk about all things UI, UX. We've then got a break, and we'll probably have a really short break. Obviously, we're not face-to-face, so we don't need as long as usual. And then we talk about all things Power Pages, introduction to Power Pages by Nick, which I think will be really exciting. As always, with these user groups, always like to thank the sponsors of the user groups, especially as we do more and more of these user groups face-to-face. Logistically, costs are involved, and everything to get these events running. So we've got 6 key sponsors there who sponsor the user groups. So I'd like to thank you for your continued support and enabling us to make these things happen. So everyone can just have a quick acknowledgement of them, and if you come across anyone, thank them for making these events a reality. So we'll start with we've got I think this is Matt who put this slide together, but we'll do a little bit of who we are, where we're from, a little bit of an intro, favorite video game or favorite movie character for Kristine and Nick. So if we all happy, nobody has any questions, I think it'd be good to start with Kristine. So we'll start with a little bit of a, who are you? Who is Kristine? What do you do? Where are you from? I feel like Cilla Black. And then a little bit of fun, favorite video game or character or movie character. And then we can then move on to talk, and I'll hand over the screen and I'll let you share your presentation, and we'll talk about all things Power Apps. So Kristine, over to you. If you want to start with a little bit of who you are, and then take control of the screen, the stage is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John. Thanks a lot. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristine. I'm just going to start sharing my screen before I start talking. And John, I can see you have your hand raised as well. I think you might have done that accidentally. Perfect. Right. So a bit about me. My name is Kristine Kolodziejski. I'm based in London in the UK. I work as a principal technical consultant for a company in the UK called Computer Centre. We are a large company across the world. 13 times Microsoft certified technical professional, very UI UX obsessed, and what comes with that accessibility as well. I love contributing to the community, to always speak at conferences, at events. I love going on the forums. I have a blog as well, and I'm just about to start a YouTube channel when I finally kind of got the courage to post the first video next week. I'm an avid gamer, so the question about the favorite video game is very suited here, John. So my favorite video game, oh, that's a very difficult question. I would probably say GTA, Call of Duty, Hitman, all of the games I shouldn't be playing. Hitman, probably The Sims a little bit as well. Yeah, so if anyone is playing online and you wanted to have a game on GTA or CSGO as an example, give me a shout and I'll be more than happy to I'd be honored to let you lose. I'm kidding. And then I'm an avid dog mum as well. I showed Jonathan before. My dog is somewhere there. If you can hear any snoring, that's him. Promise that's not me or someone under my desk. And then my favorite movie character, before I forget, that's a very good question. I would probably say Storm from the X-Men. I absolutely love her. And anyone that's part of Slytherin in Harry Potter, because I'm naughty like that. That's probably me in a kind of nutshell. This QR code is to my socials. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, on GitHub, on Twitter, feel free to just scan that in, and that will take you through to my Linktree account with all of these socials linked. So let's talk about UI and UX. We've got a lot of kind of slides, which are kind of screens that I want to kind of walk you through. So let's just start with kind of wondering why UI UX matters. So as human beings, we are, that will sound very bad, but we are very basic. So as long as you don't have a visual impairment, or you're not blind, 90% of what your brain sees will be processed. So 90% of what we see is processed by the brain. Just to kind of give you a bit more context to that, around 40% of what we hear is processed, and about 20% of what we actually read is processed by our brain. So naturally, what we see at first is very important. Love at first sight is a thing, at least in the UI UX space, not necessarily in real life. And apologies to anyone that's fallen in love at first sight, by the way. So obviously, if you have an application that does the job, it's great. It's connected to all of the APIs, an on-prem server from 20 years ago, but it looks bad. Naturally, users will be quite reluctant to either move to that system, to that application, and will not be as excited as they would be if that application looked a little bit better. So if you have an application, and even from the pre-sales perspective as a kind of consultant, if I have an application that I'm building for a demo to a customer, if the application doesn't quite do everything it should do, but it looks great, it has the corporate branding, it looks very sleek and modern, I'd say more than 70% of the time, the customer will be inclined to go ahead just based on what they see, as long as you talk them through what the app can do. So again, I know that people tend to kind of overlook the power kind of UI and UX in Power Apps, specifically obviously in Canvas apps, in model-driven apps, we're quite restricted, but it can go a very long way. And apart from that, it's just really satisfying and fun. At least that's what I think. So what I've done is I've got kind of quite a few screens on here about the tips and things that you can do to kind of take your UI to the next level. So the first thing and the kind of most obvious thing is look at the PowerCats Creator Kit that they recently deployed. I think that was around May time. So this PowerCat Fluent UI Kit is a set of components and a component library of Canvas components and PCFs with very nice Fluent UI. So if obviously anyone on the call will have used any Microsoft technology before, you will be very familiar with the kind of Fluent UI of how SharePoint sites look, how Office 365 Admin Center looks, and by deploying that, you are able to use these very quickly out of the box. I have linked as well the link to where that kit is located if you want to look at the installation guide and how to configure that. Again, I haven't done it much justice by just adding these 3 components into here. I promise there is a lot more. They've done a fantastic job on getting these up and running for our Canvas apps. The next one of my favorite ones, if you've read my blog before or you've seen my LinkedIn post before, you'll know that I'm obsessed with the HTML control. That's one of my favorite things. So the reason why is because we can do a lot with the HTML controls. So whether you want to add a hyperlink, which I'll show you later on, whether you want to add some nice box shadow, as you can see in here, you can really easily take your kind of UI in the application to another level. So just to kind of give you a bit of a kind of quick demo of how you can do it. If, let's say, you want to add some box shadow, but you're not confident in designing your box shadow, or you're not a developer, or you just wanted to copy something from the internet, I have actually linked a website in here, and I'm just going to quickly show you. If we navigate to this website actually has 93 out of the box available box shadows. And I would be lying if I said I hadn't copied these across to my applications, because we all do to cut time. So what we can do from here is we can just choose any of them that we like. Let's just say, I don't know, we'll go for 58 as an example. And all we have to do is, if I just go to navigation, all we have to do, as you can see within the HTML control, I'll just tidy this up a little bit better. There we go, the box shadow there. All we have to do is just replace that box shadow in here. Well, paste what we just copied. I didn't copy that. There we go. And as you can see, that automatically replaces. So if I were to just do Control Z, you'll see the kind of difference in here. Now from here, you can start editing this further. So if you wanted to add some color as an example, so we'll add, let's just say, a little bit of kind of reddish color to that. That's not going to be the nicest. Let's just add 87. You can't probably see that. I'll just increase that to 0.5. As you can see, we can start playing with that. Again, I'm not going to bore you with how box shadow is built. Obviously, we have the kind of spread in here, but as you can see, you can quickly kind of adjust that. And what you'll see throughout the kind of presentation is that box shadow is really what dictates how your application looks. And I'll show you how you can implement 3 types of designs in your application by just using the box shadow itself. Now, like I said before, if you want to add a hyperlink as an example, there's nothing stopping you from adding a H tag in here. So if you wanted to add an A element as an example, if we just quickly do an A element, and actually, I'll show you that later on. I've got that in my presentation anyway. We'll go over that later on. So that's it for the HTML control. Now, the HTML control is more to be used for kind of decorative purposes. So you shouldn't use it to create a button. Again, you can add a button into the HTML control by adding the button element or the input type element. But unfortunately, there's no way to pass an action or an event back from that HTML control. So even if you add a button, a simple button or a radio button, there's no way to pass that back to your application. So it really is just meant for kind of decorative purposes. Then we have my second favorite topic, which is SVGs. Now, SVGs are my absolute favorite thing in the application, in Canvas apps, and generally in CSS. The reason why is you can build pretty much anything with CSS. You can animate anything with CSS. And if you're like me and you don't really like the out of the box, I probably shouldn't say that. If you're not keen, or you find that there's not enough icons in the out of the box icon set, what you can actually do is you can extend that icon set with SVGs. So there's plenty of already made kind of ready to download PCF SVG generators that you can just get to copy the SVGs back into your application. If you want to use your own, as an example, you can go to my favorite website for SVGs is Bootstrap Icons website. I think it's called Get Icons. If you go into here, you'll be able to use one of these SVGs directly from here. So all we have to do for anyone that hasn't worked with SVGs before is when we copy the code from the SVG, we have to firstly make sure that we replace the double quotes with single quotes, and then we can pop that into our application. So if I were to just quickly open a notepad as an example, we'll just go into here, and then we will get the code. Let's just get that, and then we will open my notepad in here. We can just pop that in here, so we can just do Control H. We can replace all of the double quotes with single quotes, and then once we've done that, we're ready to pop that into the app. So to embed or add an SVG to your application, you have to use the format and then the encode URL function. If you're not sure what that looks like, this is the format. Again, there's plenty of blogs available online on how to do that step by step. And I think I linked something on the top as well. I maybe didn't, sorry. So as you can see, we're declaring the format of the image, and then we are using the encode URL function, and this is where our SVG goes. So what I'm going to do is, because I don't want to ruin my SVG that I have in here, I'm just going to quickly copy and paste, and then we'll go back to our notepad. that, select everything, just copy that. I'm pressing Control and C for anyone watching. And then within here, within the SVG, we just need to pop that text that we've just copied into here between the double quotes here, but make sure we don't kind of delete the brackets. Now, if I take that off, whatever SVG I just used, as you can see, we have that in there now. So what we can start doing from here is we can start kind of manipulating the way this looks. So if I wanted to, as an example, add a color, we can just go to the fill property in here and we can just say, I want that to be, I don't know, a gray color as an example. We'll just give it a gray color. That's not made a massive difference. I'll just give it some random color so you can actually see the difference. Let me just move that there. If we just do, let's say, okay, so as you can see, you can quickly change that. Now, naturally, when you're adding SVGs, you don't really want to have to do that manually for every single one that you add to your application, because that's going to just take time. So what you can actually do is what you will see on here, so if I just quickly take that out, is you can actually assign the fill property of your SVG directly to the slider control. So the way we're doing it is if I was to just open one of these, whoops, one of these, there we go. As you can see in the path fill property in here, we're declaring the RGBA value, and then we're just passing the value of the slider number 1, which is going to be a red color, value of slider number 2, which is the green color, and then value of the slider number 3, which is the blue color. Funnily enough, I've actually noticed that these are actually highlighted in green, red, and blue. I have no idea why that's done that. Someone please tell me. But that's a very easy way to kind of pass the fill color to that. And then if I was to kind of start manipulating the sliders, as you can see, that will automatically change the color for us as well. So that's a really easy to kind of way to extend the existing icon set of the icons in the application and get these up in here. Whether that's a company logo, as an example, majority of companies will have an SVG logo just because you are able to scale them up. So for anyone that's not obviously worked with SVGs, SVGs is so much better than a PNG format of an icon because you can obviously scale them up and down as you wish without losing the quality. Now, if you use an icon from, let's say, flat icon, I use that when I first started with Power Apps, you will lose quality very quickly. You can't change the colors dynamically, so then you lose that kind of ability to be able to edit, and then you have to go back to flat icon again, download it again in the color you want, and it's just, yeah, it's just a real kind of fuss. So if we go to the next slide from the SVGs, one thing that you can actually do is start adding linear gradient. So at the moment, there's no way to add linear gradients to your icons out of the box with the colors, just because you can only pass a single tone of a color to your icons. So what we can actually do with these SVGs is, as you can see, we can pass the linear gradient directly into here. Now, to do that, we have a very simple snippet. I'm not going to expect anyone to learn how to write that by hand, but we have a very simple snippet in here. Now, the way this snippet is built is, as you can see, we are just declaring the defs, and then in here, we're declaring the spread of how we want the linear gradient to kind of look, and then the stop offset for the first value of the SVG and the stop offset for the second value. And the reason why I have 65 is because it will create a nice kind of halfway through effect, so it doesn't look too kind of blocky. Again, this, you can manipulate that as much as you want. And then all we have to do in here is just declare the colors. So we can change the colors as much as we want. Now, if you want to use that linear gradient in your SVG, you have one more step that you need to do. So in order to be able to use that color, is because we've only just declared it, we haven't assigned it anywhere, we have to go to the path filling here, as you can see, and we have to declare that gradient in here. So I'll quickly show you on the real example how that works. So if I was to just quickly copy that snippet from here quickly from the devs. Now, if we navigate to the second balloon that we have in here, for anyone that's, again, not worked with SVGs, we have a very kind of simple structure, which I've kind of tried to space out a little bit. We have the first line. This is where we declare things like the namespace. As you can see, we have the XMLNS here. We have the width, the height, the fill, and all of that kind of funky stuff. Then we have what's called the path. So the path is effectively the building block of SVG. Now, if you have a very complex SVG built on multiple elements, you might have multiple paths, as an example. In that case, you will need to declare that color for every single one of these individually, or you can assign it directly from the first line here, which will then mean that every single path will inherit that color. So if we, and then underneath the path, as you can see, we have the closing SVG tag, and then we have the double brackets and obviously double quotes, sorry, and the brackets to close the encode URL function. So if we were to just add that linear gradient in here, the first thing we'll do is we'll add the snippet where we declare the actual gradient. Just think of it as your variable. I think that's the easiest way to kind of think of that in the Power Apps context. And then all we have to do is we have to declare that in here. So because if I just quickly do here, because as you can see, we don't already have a fill property in here. We just have the fill rule, which isn't applicable to what we're doing. We have to declare this manually. Oh, sorry, deleted that by accident. We have to declare that manually. And then we'll open the single bracket, sorry, single quotes. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to use the URL function in here to be able to use that attribute, closing brackets, and then in here we just need to use the hashtag, and we need to declare the name of the gradient that you want to use. So as you can see, the name that I've given us, and this is obviously the name, is gradient. So all I'm going to have to do in here is just put gradient. And the reason why I've done it is just because it's much easier to kind of find what I'm looking for. Now, chances are when I close the kind of code area now, we should have that SVG in a nice linear gradient format. As you can see, we have that nice color assigned. If you want to find some cool linear gradients, you will see that I've linked one of my favorite websites as well. This website is this website here. Now, it has, I think, around 100 kind of pre-made, pre-generated linear gradients. Again, there are plenty of online generators available that you can use to generate your linear gradients. But if you like to just kind of go and then do it the quicker way, you can copy one of these from here. So if I was to just quickly show you an example, let's just go for, let's just choose a nice one. I'll just choose this one as an example. All we have to do is we can just literally copy that, go back to application, go back in here, paste that in here. As you can see, we have too many hashtags, so we'll just take that one out. Go back to UI gradient again, get that color, pop that in here, pop that into here. And then as you can see, that's now changed the color. And this is as quick as that. So if you wanted to have, again, sliders for both linear gradients as an example, like you saw in the previous screen, you can easily do that as well and link that directly in here. Now, the next kind of thing that you may have seen on my blog that I've posted a couple of times is the ability to make your SVG look like it's glowing. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Why do I need a glowing SVG in Power Apps? It's more really to just kind of show you what is actually possible with SVGs. So to make an SVG glow, again, we have a very simple snippet. I'm not going to expect anyone to obviously understand what's happening there. But to do this, we're using the Gaussian blur. So to create that kind of nice neon glow around, we're using the Gaussian blur. And then to make sure, because obviously we want the glow to inherit the color of our actual SVG, so we want it to be the same color, we're using the merge node to inherit that color and give our glow the same color as the fill property of our icon. So in order to do the glow with the SVG, we have to do exactly the same thing. So we declare that here as a variable, and then all we have to do, as you can see, we have to declare that glow in here as a filter. So rather than using fill, we're using filter for this occasion. And I'll quickly show you that in a real life example as well. So if I was to just, again, I'm going to go the very lazy way. I'm just going to copy that, click in Control and C, and then we'll go to our SVG in here. Again, like I said before, we have the building blocks, so we want to put that variable between here. So I'll just quickly make a bit more space just so we can make it more readable. So now we have that in here. All we have to do is we have to declare that filter in here. So again, you'll remember that we used filter. Again, if you ever forget what you need to use, you can just look at the opening tags, and this is what will indicate what you need to use in here. So we'll do filter, then we'll do equals, and then single quotes. And again, we're using the URL again, and then we're using the hashtag, and then we need to get the name of that glow. I gave it glow, so we'll just do glow. Oops, glow. Close that off. And then as you can see, we have the black kind of shadow around here. So we have one kind of slight issue, as you can see. So the box shadow, well, the glow is kind of getting cut off. So there's a couple of ways to work around it. Now, this is because of kind of how the view box is structured, and then this is because of the kind of height proportion to the view box. So if you wanted to quickly make that shadow more around the edges to kind of get rid of that, you can obviously reduce the SDD deviation, which will make the glow more around the edges. Alternatively, if you actually want to keep the SED deviation, so the glow around the spread, to be this as it is now, but want to make sure that the balloon fits, we can just manipulate the height as an example. So I think for this one, we'll probably need to manipulate the width a little bit more. I think if we just do 22 as an example, or perhaps maybe we'll do 15. We'll just do 13 and then we'll make that slightly bigger, perhaps. As you can see, we can just manipulate that. Again, I don't want to waste everyone's time. We can play with the view box as well if needed, but that's unfortunately the downfall of what we have in here. Actually, if I was to just make that quickly, 16 and 18, that might work, I think, if we just do 18. Yeah, we still got the cutoff edges. Again, it takes a bit of playing around. Sometimes it can be a bit of pain, but you get the gist. So if we wanted to add the lineal gradient again, all we have to do is just go back into here. Again, we can use that snippet that I've got in here already, copy that, go to the other one, declare that variable. Again, there's no there's no difference where you put that. So if you put that after the filter, there's no kind of order difference in there. And all we have to do now is we can just assign the fill. Oops, sorry, can't type today, fill, and then we'll declare that again. So we'll do URL, and then we'll do, I think I called it gradient, and then we'll close that off. Oops, not this one, this one. And as you can see, we have that in there. Again, ignore the cutoff edges for anyone watching. So once we've done that, just to kind of show you what else you can achieve with the lineal gradient, you can actually create a nice kind of rainbow. As you can see, I did that for Pride last month. You can create a nice kind of moving animated gradient. And again, to achieve that, we're doing two simple things. There's no, as you can see, there's no kind of timers doing that for us. This is literally using SVG code directly in here and using CSS. So the first thing that we have is the defs. So this is, again, you'll remember from the previous kind of slide, this is where we declare the lineal gradient. And then we're using the animate attribute animate proper elements to be able to animate the attribute of type subcolor. Subcolor is, you'll remember from here, is where the boundary is. And then all we have to do is we have to increment that by the amount of colors that we have. So, by 100% divided by the amount of colors that we have. Again, don't want to bore you. If you want to quickly get that effect, so if I was to just quickly scroll down, you can see that we're incrementing that by 9%. If you were to quickly get that, all you have to do is literally copy the whole snippet, and I'll quickly show you. If we just quickly go down again, I know it looks very long, but it makes sense when you look at that. If I was just going to here, all you have to do is get the defs element. We'll just copy that all the way up. We can see that the opening tag is in here. Then we just need to go into here, go again into here, pop that into there. And then all we have to do again is we have to declare the fill. So if I were to just do fill, we'll do URL. I've forgotten what it was called. Is it called gradient again? Gradient. Yep, it's called gradient. If we go into here, gradient, and then close that off, and then hopefully our balloon will have the rainbow color. Now, as you can see, that's as quick as that. So we don't have to use timers. We don't have to use anything else. We can just literally declare that directly within the SVG. Obviously, if we use timers, we are naturally adding additional controls to our application, which means that the application is going to be more heavy. And then it means there's more maintenance around it as well. And then that it will work slower. And obviously, we have to be mindful of the 500 controls limit as well. Then another way to kind of animate an SVG, and you may have seen it on my blog as well, is another thing that we can do is you can see we can make it kind of float. So if you've seen one of the menus that I've done, I like the icons to kind of float from top to bottom. And this is even simpler than the other one. So for to declare that to make the icon animate kind of go from top to bottom, all we have to do is, again, we're using the animate element in here. So we've got the animate transform element here. We are animating the translate. So translate is responsible for X and Y axis. And all we're doing in here is, if we look in values, we have kind of split that into three parts. So this is the starting point of SVG. So this is the X and Y. This is the middle point, so the kind of final point, where we want that SVG to go, the highest point we want it to go. And then this is the landing zone, so kind of where you will go back to. Now duration, DUR, that stands for duration. Again, 1 second means that it will flow kind of nicely and slowly. If I was to kind of reduce that time to, let's say, 0.2, you'll probably see that icon will now be kind of jiggling from top to bottom. If you wanted the icon to, let's say, go higher than that, you can obviously go to, let's say, 35 as an example. Oh, sorry, not 3000. Sorry, that was very bad. There you go. One thing that you need to be mindful of is obviously as you're making it kind of jump from top to bottom, you need to be mindful of the kind of view box in here as well. That's another thing to kind of be mindful of, but that's as easy as that. So once we have added this snippet as an example, we don't have to declare it anymore. We can literally just pop that into between the first line and then the path, and then that will automatically inherit the animation. You don't even have to put it in here. You can actually put it at the end of the code as well. So if I was to just quickly go to show you that, if we just go to the balloon, if we go into here, I can pop that directly into here, and as you can see, that automatically starts floating. That's because it will automatically inherit that. If I was to just pop that right at the end of the code, that will automatically start floating as well. And that's really as easy as that to make an animation in Power Apps. Now, again, I've obviously given that previous kind of SVG, the glow and the linear gradient. Again, we've done that already. We're not going to kind of go over the same thing again. Then another thing that you can do with SVGs is create loaders. So again, a very shameless plug. Apologies, Manchester user group. I have linked my GitHub repo. So I have built a component that you can use in Canvas app straight out of the box that you can have 7 SVG loaders in here. So the component itself, if I was to just navigate into here, as you can see, has a couple of properties in here. One of them is the loader type. So if you go into my GitHub, you'll see the kind of types of loaders we have. So if we go by 1, as you can see, we have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6. And then we have bonus, which is what I've called the Microsoft logo that I've animated. Again, you can change the color of these SVGs apart from the Microsoft logo. Again, obviously we can't change corporate colors of the logo. You can decide whether you want that text to be visible on the bottom. So if you don't want that label to be there, you can change that. If you want to change the size or the color of that as well, you can. So again, to do that, we are again using animate attribute. Animate transform again. We have that snippet in here, as you can see. So we are deciding on, because we have 3 circles, every single one of them will have the animate attribute, animate transform element assigned to it. And this is just effectively the animation. So as you can see, we're going, this is the starting point, the final the highest point, and then the landing kind of point, and then the time it will take as well. So that's really as easy as that. I know I may make it sound very easy, but trust me, once you know exactly where to fit the code and then how to work around it, it becomes much easier. Again, another very shameless plug, I'm sorry. Another components from my GitHub page. These are the SVG loader components. So again, I have a kind of a more rectangle loading components for your apps and a circle one. Both of these are animated. So if I were to just quickly change the value of one of them to, let's say, 56 as an example, you see that that's nicely loading. Now, if you were to achieve that in Power Apps, you'd have to use a timer control again. You'd have to probably use a variable maybe as well, or a contextual variable. So again, it becomes kind of it becomes control heavy. Whereas with this one, we just have a very simple snippet, again, animate transform that we're using in there to be able to animate that. Similarly, we have that in here too. So if I was to just say, let's say, oh, that's a very wrong number, 69, no, 67. If we're to just use that in here, as you can see, that will animate that for us. We have a few kind of properties that you can change. So if you want to change the text color as an example, you can change that. If you want to change the color of the icon in here, you can also change that. That's the SVG in one of these SVGs. I've forgotten which one it was. You can also change the linear gradient of that. So if you wanted to have a different color on your kind of progress bar, you can easily kind of, let me just copy that, paste it into here. Oops, there we go. And as you can see, that will change color. Then we'll give it the blue as well. There we go. And there we go. And as you can see, that will quickly change the color. Again, not the best color combination because that offset is not the best. I might have to change that a bit, but that's as easy as you can get these into your application as well. Then I have a secret kind of icon hack. So it's not a very common hack. If you use SharePoint Online, you might be familiar with this one. But if you want to add additional icons to, let's say, a button as an example, but you don't necessarily want to use an icon and you don't necessarily want to use an SVG because it's too much work, you can actually, use another type of icon. Does anyone know what these icons are actually called? If you type it in the chat and you get it right, please tell me next time. Oh, fellows typing, quick fingers again. Let's see. So we are all patiently waiting. Yay, Phil guessed it. Pete, tell me, Phil. So these are all Unicode characters. So if you've ever used emojis as an example, they are built using Unicode as well. So they are effectively text characters that you can add to your control. So if you've, let's say if we add, as an example, a button. Now, if you wanted to, let's say, add an icon from a button. So if I was to click on that label in here, you can see that none of these are icons. This is just a label, and I've inserted all of these Unicode icons in here. If I wanted to quickly create a button that will say send, we will give it some nice color. I will just change the color of that. So let's say this bright blue as an example. And what we will do is I will just go into here, copy this from here, add that into text in here. And that's as quickly as you can make a button with an icon. So this is very kind of bootstrappy kind of button, but this is how quickly you can do that. So you don't have to worry about, the X and Y properties of the icon, responsiveness, because this is text. It will automatically inherit the color of your text as well. So if I was to just change the color of the text of that button to, let's say, red, you will see that envelope is automatically changing the color. Equally, if you change, again, that's not the best color. I'll just quickly make that white again. If you were to change the size of the font to, let's say, 11, you will see that automatically scales down as well. So it's a fantastic way to get icons really quickly without actually adding any payload to the application too. Now, these are just sample icons. If you want some more icons, I found a very cool website called Cool Symbol, no pun intended. We can copy that link from there, Control C, and then pop that into here. And this allows you to copy all of the Unicode icons directly from here. So you can just click on one of these. Again, you can see emojis. Now, one thing to note with emojis is that although they will scale down and up and with size, you can't actually change the color, because even though they're Unicode, they kind of slightly built differently. So I would always suggest using one of the black and white ones. But you can literally just copy that, go into here, and then go to my button, and then I'm clicking Control and V. And then there you go, you've got that in there. So that's as quickly as you can do that without having to add icons and all of that to your application as well. Now, the next tip that I have is, I've forgotten, is around text input. So just to kind of quickly show you how you can manipulate a text input. Now, one of the things that one of the issues that I have with the text input is that there's not a lot of customization that you can do with it. So what I have done in here is I have created a custom text input. Now, if you were to use out-of-the-box controls to create something like this, you'd have to use an SVG icon on an out-of-the-box icon, a label, and then text input with a white background. For this, all I'm using is a HTML control. So the HTML control, if I just quickly go into the top HTML control, this is where I'm keeping the text, as you can see, of our input. This is where I'm keeping the color of my text. This is where I'm keeping all the formatting as well. So as you can see, this is a font that we don't actually get out of the box, one of my favorite fonts as well, that you can use in here. And then on top of that HTML control, we still have the text input. So as you can see, we have that right here. If I was to just click on there, if I start typing, you can see that we have that text input in here. Now, based on that, I have built a new morphic text input as well. So if I was to just click on that, as you can see, that becomes inset very immediately, and I can start typing in here too. This is a password password mode, which is why it's typing this way as well. So that's a very quick way to implement some of the things that I've showed you so far. Another thing, one of my favorite things to talk about is nice navigation menus. Now, navigation is very important to users. That's how you guarantee a good user experience. If you open an application and you can't find how to navigate to one of the main screens, chances are your users will click off that application or close it very quickly, just because, you know, if you want to find something that's key to using the application, so a screen that's, you know, performing the main operation, let's say add something to basket, you want that button to be right in the middle of your screen. You want that to be visible and reachable. And if you're using a mobile phone as an example, You want that to be called within what's called, I'm not sure why my camera is kind of slowed down. You want that to be within what's called the thumb zone. So the thumb zone is effectively the area that you can easily reach with your thumb as a user. So if you're like me, if there's anything above a kind of this area, you probably won't touch it. And if you're like me, I tend to kind of lean my phone like that on my thumb and try and navigate. That's very, very bad because the amount of times I've dropped my phone can't be counted. But this is why you probably need a nice menu. So I've seen a lot of people do like flyout menus that are hidden behind a cog. I'm not very keen on them. They are not very accessible either, if I'm honest, because the screen reader will not read them. So I would probably suggest trying to sway away as much as you can from flyout menus, if possible, and kind of go for something that's visible on the screen. And again, very simple menus. They are built exactly the same. So we are using exactly the same controls, HTML and SVG with a little bit of animation. So as you can see, that's floating as well. And then just a bit of color, and that's as easy as that. So we just have a very kind of simple menu component, and then this one is very over the top, I know, with just a bit of box shadow in there. Then the next thing that we can do is, you might have seen it. I think I've spammed everyone's Twitter and LinkedIn feed with neumorphism. Apologies if you've seen too much of it. So one of the things that I've done recently is build a neumorphic buttons in Power Apps. This was just to kind of see how far I can take it. So if we click on one of them, neumorphism, as you can see, is the kind of effect is to provide a real life kind of experience for buttons. So they make the button look like it's on the screen, like you were just about to touch it. And then when you press it, it kind of creates a nice instant box shadow. Now, all we're doing here is we are manipulating the box shadow only. We're not doing anything else. If I was to just quickly go into here and I'll open one of these, if I was to just open one of these, what you will actually see is we are manipulating the box shadow. So if the button hasn't been pressed, this is the box shadow I wanted to have. If it has been pressed, we want the box shadow to be inset and obviously look like the button has been pressed. That's all we're doing. We don't have to have any timer controls, nothing at all. We are literally just manipulating that box shadow with that variable only. So the next thing that I have on here is dark neumorphic buttons as well. So if I was just going to go into here, again, very same principle. The only thing that's kind of slightly different is that I've added a bit of glow to the icons and lineal grading just to make them a little bit more modern as well. Again, you would not be able to achieve that with just out of the box controls. Well, when I say out of the box controls, HTML control is an out of the box control, but you wouldn't be able to achieve that with just the basic controls that you can use in the application. Then just besides the neumorphic stuff, for anyone that hasn't seen, I have recently released a neumorphic UI kit for applications. So if I was just quickly navigate to my ad application, so I've developed a neumorphic UI kit for your Canvas apps in 3 different color schemes. You have ice blue, gray, silver I've called it, and we have the dark mode. This is the dark mode. This allows you to, as you can see, we have multiple controls, things like star rating, all of them are custom. A date pick as an example, the custom toggle, custom checkboxes, custom slider, even custom text input with a nice kind of glowing bar on the top, custom menu, all of that in here. And again, obviously the buttons. If you want to change the colors of that, you can use one of the predefined gradings in here. And if you're feeling creative, you can actually go to the second screen of the application and do a pick and mix yourself. So if I was just going to here, if I was to just choose pink and let's say blue as an example, you can see that that's changing. So if you, like I said, if you're feeling creative and you want to change the colors yourself, you can play around with them as well. So these are available on my GitHub. If you want to download them, they are available in my repos in there. The next thing that I've done, and again, it's not the most useful thing, but it just looks really nice, is I've added glowing buttons. So the first thing I want you to watch is what's going to happen on the top. So we will have drawing SVG. So as you can see, we had the kind of nice drawing in there, and then they will kind of toggle on. The idea is that they will look a bit like neon kind of lamps. So as you can see, I love my neon lamps. I generally love lighting, as you can see, obviously surrounded by lighting. So this is just to kind of create, and as you can see, they will kind of toggle and then toggle on to kind of create that flicker effect. Again, if I was to just open one of these, let's say this one, if I was to just open one of these, we're using exactly the same thing that I just showed you before. So using, again, We're using the Gaussian blur in here, and then we're using some animation as well. If I was to scroll down again, it looks a bit long, but once you understand exactly what's happening in there, you'll understand. The only difference that we have in here is that animation is done using keyframes as opposed to animate transform, just because keyframes allow you to animate a lot more than the animate transform. But again, I will not go into the details because that's boring to most people. I'm just a geek. And the next thing I've done is I've created this kind of glowy buttons. Don't ask me why. Do we need a glowing button? Probably not, but it looks cool, so why not? And again, if I was to open the HTML control, as you can see, all we're doing in here is we're literally just defining that glow by using the box shadow in here. And then text shadow is what's creating the shadow. If I was just go that, it's what's creating that nice shadow around the edges there. And then as you can see, we also have the Unicode icon in there too. And that's as simple as that. So what I'm going to show you next is kind of a few examples of how you can implement what I've just showed you in your application to actually make them look like an app rather than just separate components. So a couple of weeks ago, I posted a before and after of a new Morphic application. Again, it boomed on LinkedIn. I definitely wasn't expecting it to get that much attention. But the idea was to kind of show you how you can, what an app would look like by using out-of-the-box controls and how you can take it to next level, still using out-of-the-box controls. So we're not using any PCFs as an example, but how we can glow it up a little bit more. So this is using just basic kind of properties and controls. And then if I was to go into here, this is the kind of after of that application. So as you can see, again, we have the new Morphic buttons that I just showed you then. We have a little bit of box shadow, which is creating that nice kind of glow-like effect. And then we just have a nice kind of custom toggle on the bottom, as you can see that I built. This is one of the toggles that's available in my UI kit as well. And that's all we're doing. So we're not even doing that much. This, oh, sorry, move that there. This probably took about half an hour to do. As you can see, we also have the Unicode icon in there. So this is all we're doing really is just applying everything that I've just showed you there. I'm not sure why my camera has just gone off. Guessing no one can see me anymore. If you can, sorry. So that's all we're doing. So if you want to learn how to do this step by step, I am launching my YouTube channel next week. So my first video is going to be how to build and take your application from this to this step by step. So if you want to, I will be posting that on LinkedIn as well. And then just a few more kind of things in practice. So again, we have a bit of neumorphism in here. If I'll just quickly go to show in here. So again, we have a nice kind of card with just a bit of box shadow around the edges. We have text shadow around here, so you can see it's kind of glowy. Then we have the text, so we have the Unicode icons in here, as you can see. Then we have the glowing kind of text inputs that I just showed you that you can get from my UI kit. Then we have just a very simple button, and then this is the link that I mentioned before. So if you were to create a hyperlink within a Power App, you can obviously use the launch function. Now, if you, let's say, add a label to your screen and add launch website to the on select, and I'm just going to quickly show you that in here. Let me just quickly find insert, and we'll just do label. If you were to just add a, let's say, I'll make that text white just so everyone can see. If you were to, let's say, go to on select property, on select wherever that's gone, there we go. If you were to, let's say, launch, we can just do launch https google.com. Okay, you can do that. Now, if you click on that, obviously it will launch the website. There you go. However, as you can see, when we hover over that and I'll go to play mode, this is not giving me any indication that this is a hyperlink. So if I'm a user and I can see click here, but there's no underline as an example, I'm not sure if I should click on that. And the other indication is obviously because it's giving us the kind of the icon to show us that there is text in there. There's no kind of indication that this is a clickable link. Now, if I was to navigate into here, as you can see, we actually have a kind of hover mouse on there that indicates that this is a button. Not only that, we also have the tooltip in there that indicates to us that if I click on here, it will sign me up and it will just take me to Google again. And the way I've achieved it, and again, I've posted this on my blog, we are using again the HTML control to define. We are just declaring a very simple ahref and anchor tag in there with the link and then obviously the text that we wanted to give, and that's all we're doing. This is actually a much more accessible way to do the link as well, if you want to make sure that your applications are accessible. Now, the next thing that I've done in here as well is just a couple of examples of things that I've done. So this is a very simple kind of food application. Again, I know it's not the best use case for a Power App, but this is just to kind of show you how you can apply a bit of glass morphism into the application very quickly. And all we're doing again in here, as you can see, is we have a Unicode icon, have a bit of box shadow around the edges, a bit of box shadow in here, and then we have an SVG with a little bit of box shadow in there. And another kind of take on that is if we wanted to make that design to look claymorphic, that's another UI framework, we can do the same. So we can still use the box shadow property. So all we're doing is just changing the box shadow here to make it look like it's more nice, kind of fluffy and 3D. A bit of animation in there. So if I was to just zoom in, you can see that that icon is floating from top to bottom, and then a bit of box shadow in here. So as you can see, we have that nice kind of inset box shadow in there. And that's really as simple as that to take your applications to next level. So that's it for my presentation. I'm surprised we managed to squeeze this in on time. Are there any questions at all? Any thoughts? Any feedback? And I've actually just noticed, sorry, I've just noticed that my face is frozen. No one has told me, and I'm making the worst face ever. Any questions at all?
Excellent. Thank you, Kristine. Yeah, so anybody, obviously everyone's muted, but feel free to either raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask any questions.
I'm just trying to fix my camera as we're waiting for questions because I'm not sure what. Oops. Yes, Phil, so you can now have the HTML control in your custom pages, I think, if I remember correctly. I will have a look for you, certainly. But as long as you can have a HTML control, you can have an image, so you can definitely have all of the SVGs in there already. I just need to make sure on the HTML control. Actually, we'll just quickly make sure that we can. Custom pages HTML control. I am pretty sure you can. Custom model driven apps. Then custom page. Okay, I'll have to have a look. I don't want to waste everyone's time, but I'll have a look for you, Phil, and then let you know, drop you a message later on LinkedIn. Any more questions at all? Thank you very much, Chris. Seeing what is possible. Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much, Esteban. I can see that some people are typing questions as well. Feel free to speak out as well. Or have we muted everyone? Sorry, Jonathan, if we've muted everyone.
Yeah, I think people can unmute themselves.
Oh, okay. Sorry, yeah, I didn't want to tell. Didn't want to,
no, it's fine.
To speak out, and then they're unmuted. So if you want to speak out instead of typing, please feel free to kind of speak out as well. Wait, I can see that we have a couple more people typing. To know if you can just see this transition when hovering. That's a very good question, Esteban. So at present, there is no way to pass an on-hover event to an HTML control or an SVG. So if you wanted to achieve that, you would have to build a PCF control instead. Yeah, that's the kind of quickest answer. So for the time being, unfortunately, you can't pass any on-hover events just yet, but you can do that with a PCF control if you're a developer and you're confident building one as well. I can see some more questions. Play with books after the year. Thank you for this. Perfect. Thank you so much, Damon. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much, Phil, as well. Really appreciate it. Any more questions at all before I hand over to the fantastic Nick on the fantastic Power Pages?
I think a great presentation, Kristine, as we expected, to be honest.
Thank you.
I think one of the things I take from Power Apps and UI and UX, etc. now is, it was only yesterday when a Power App was a solution to replace a piece of paper to capture some information. Yeah. And I think, even we've been recruiting internally, we've seen a massive change in people's approaches to actually what is a Power App. And it's not just about a form. Now it's much more than that. So yeah, great. It was great to see some creative ideas coming in there, and
thank you.
It'd be really exciting to see if anyone on this call wants to take away some of the lessons and come back and share some of the learnings.
I agree. And just to give you a bit of background as well, just to kind of go on that point, Jonathan. So just to kind of let you know, like all of these lights that you can see behind me, including the neon lights, are actually controlled by Power Automate every day. And I've got a Power App wrapped around it. So all I am doing is literally connecting to the Govy Lights API to be able to switch these on with Power Automate and the Power App. So again, it's not just a form anymore. You can build pretty much anything you want. I mean, we've seen people build games before. You can do anything you want as well. But anyway, not taking any more of Nick's presentation time. Sorry, Nick.
No, cheers, Kristine. So conscious that most of us are sat at home, so I'm making an assumption that people are comfortable not having a 10-minute break to get a piece of pizza. So if everyone's happy, I think I'd be quite happy to hand over to Nick, who will take lead. Be good to quick introduction, Nick, who you are, favorite character and all that good stuff, and then go straight into the new kid on the block, Pages. That'd be great. Over to you.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Jonathan. And man, that was everybody can hear me okay? Thumbs up or claps or whatever. Okay,
all good.
Awesome. It's how do I follow up a presentation from Kristine like that? That was amazing. There's so many cool stuff. I don't get to play with Canvas apps as much as I want to these days, but just seeing that, I'm just like, this truly great stuff, and it's just amazing what you can do with this technology these days. So my presentation might not be as dynamic in terms of the visuals, but hopefully people still find it very, very helpful as well. So I'm going to share my screen and also make sure I don't have any state secrets happening. So I'll just I did prepare a bit of a deck. So I won't spend much of my time in PowerPoint, I do promise, because I know how people prefer. I'll just move Teams over here. I got my multiple screens. I've begun to do some, just first off, everybody can see my screen, right? I just have the introducing Power Pages.
Yep, all good.
Awesome, cool. It's interesting because we're beginning to do some live presentations again. I was at European Power Platform Summit. I was at Scottish Summit. And you get kind of spoiled with these virtual events because you have all your screens and everything, so you can move these things around, and all of a sudden you're just back to a laptop again. So all good. All right, so basically today I'm going to talk about introducing Power Pages, and I will talk a little bit about myself just to get the introductions done. Again, sponsors, they're the ones that keep these user groups going, and having run user groups and events myself, I know what it's like to chase these folks down and get them to commit some funds or swag or whatever else. So definitely greatly appreciate that. Basically, a little bit about myself. I'm currently I'm employed. I work for a company, a software startup called Microsoft that you may or may not have heard about. Been working there since September of last fall, where I'm a senior content developer. And basically I'm I'm responsible for the documentation for Power Apps, portals, and Power Pages. I do a few other things there, interact with the engineering teams and whatever, but that's effectively my role. I have about 20 years experience with the Power Platform now. People, they might read that and they might question going, wait a minute, Power Platform's only really been out a couple of years, but it came before that. For those of you who've been around the block know that the Dataverse was really the Microsoft CRM backend, and we were creating entities and creating apps back in the late 2000s using CRM. From that, I am a former Microsoft MVP from 2017 to 2021. What happens is when you join Microsoft, before they'll hand you that blue badge, they're going to take the MVP badge away. So basically, that's the reason why I'm no longer an MVP, but still very much involved in the community. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. I don't do enough of that lately. I find I really enjoy training. A little bit more on that later. And then another thing that completely outside of the Microsoft technology, I'm a competitive powerlifter. I am on Team Canada. I am scheduled to go to Panama City for an event in a couple of weeks. However, I did injure my back 2 weeks ago today, so my training's a little bit off the rails. Hopefully, I'll be back in form in the weeks before I head off to that. So, but anyways, that's sort of the fun stuff I do. Those are the different ways to connect with me. Definitely reach out to me probably on like LinkedIn or follow me on Twitter. If you're connecting with me on LinkedIn, just mention that you've seen where you saw me on the UK Manchester user group, just so I know where folks are coming from. Because sometimes I'll accept a LinkedIn invitation like we all do, and the next thing you know, they're trying to sell me hair products. So yeah, really, that's not going to work. So anyways, moving on from that. Just one little caveat, my boss maybe says, because I am working for Microsoft right now, I am a full-time employee of the Microsoft Corporation, but a lot of the ideas, the views, the options, and really about my own experiences. So just in case I say something a little bit off kilter and it kind of goes up the chain and down the chain, just want to make sure you just don't get me in any kind of trouble. So we'll just continue on. So basically, the video game character, movie character, I know I was supposed to say that too. I don't play a lot of video games lately, although I'd have to say, in terms of the character that I really liked, I played the Breath of the Wild Nintendo Switch, like Link, the Zelda thing. And so then I really enjoyed that. And my cat wants to go out of the office, so just wait 1 second. I'm going to let her out, and then I'll go right back. So this is the beauty of virtual events. So just give me 2 seconds here. All right, sorry about that. It was interesting because I know Kristine's dog slept very peacefully and quietly behind. So my cat was sort of like, "Oh, you're talking, I'm going to leave." So anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to just talk a little bit about what Power Pages are, because you probably heard a lot of buzz about it being the new thing in the Power Platform. We're going to build a very simple website, take a look at some of the tools, design some of the pages, and then also show a page that can edit and show data. And we'll also talk a little bit about security. And I'll try to make sure we have some time for some questions at the end, because you might have a few questions about what this is all about. So what are Power Pages? So really, Power Pages, as much as we say it's the new kid on the block, it's kind of the old kid, but the old kid has some new clothes. Basically, where it is built on Power Apps portals, it's the same back end, and I'm going to show you a screen that has some of the sort of where the technology fits in. What's new about it? There's a brand new what we call a design studio that's divided up into workspaces, and we're going to take a look at those. There is a pages workspace, a styling workspace, a data workspace, and a setup workspace. There's also some new templates. For those of you who worked with portals in the past, you know that has been a lot of templates based on the Dynamics 365 applications, but now there's some other new ones as well. And ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a tool that allows you to build websites. But what's cool about it is you can actually have the external folks interacting with this website be able to do things like create, read, update, delete data in Dataverse. So a lot of that back-end information, if you've written Power Apps to interact with Dataverse and flows and things, but you want to be able to expose this to an external audience, Power Pages is the way to do it. And Power Pages can be a component in an overall business application or completely standalone. We can talk about creating administrative interfaces using Power Pages. There's a couple of examples of portals or pages that are out in the wild for those of you who've used XRM Toolbox. That site's built on Power Apps portals. There's some other vaccination sites. I'm not sure if you've seen on the news, there was a pandemic a few months back, so there's a lot of sites being built up around that. And then a few other things in terms of like scholarship applications or subsidies and other membership type systems. I've worked on a lot of different projects over the years that use this technology. So this is kind of like one of the last few slides I'm going to show, but really about what's the difference between Power Pages and Power Apps portals, because you might be looking at it going, wait a minute, this is new, but it's old. Where does it all fit? So I really broke it down by the personas. We talk about makers, developers, and administrators. The maker, for those of you who are working in Power Apps portals, you might be used to the Portal Studio right now. That's generally available. One of the new things is a design studio, and we talked about the different workspaces, and we'll take a look at that. The portal management app is still there. That is the model-driven app. looks a lot like Dynamics 365, which allows you to manipulate your portal metadata and how your site's configured. There's some other templates. We already have the starter template and, of course, the traditional Dynamics 365 templates. And then we have some new templates. We have an after-school booking and a book a meeting, and there's other new templates that are going to be released in the next few months. We also have this thing called a Learn Hub. So one of the new things at Microsoft we're trying to do is move some of the documentation, the tutorials, videos kind of within the product itself. And this is sort of one of the ways we're doing this with this Learn Hub. And that was a lot of work that I've done with the team to make that happen. A lot of great people did a lot of hard work on that as a way to access, it's a new tool. Let's get some good information really close to our fingertips. And then in terms of the other things for developers, you can use VS Code with the command line, Power Platform command line utilities. This is already GA. You can use this today. I'm not going to dive too deeply into that, but I can quickly show you that. And then we also have the ability to administer the portal with the portal admin center and that kind of thing. A lot of that is now going to be surfaced in something called the setup workspace, again, within the design studio. But the bottom end tech, that portals runtime, that's what's powering Power Apps portals today. That's not remaining static. That is continually being improved and updated. There's new features coming there, but really at the end of the day, it's the same engine that's running both Power Pages and Power Apps portals. All right, so we're going to kind of dive in. And basically, if you want it, you can try this today. This is pretty cool. You just got to go to make.powerpages.microsoft.com and you can go and spin up a Power Pages preview. And now when this was first released in the end of May, it gave you a 30-day trial. What Microsoft said, hey, 30 days isn't enough. We need the whole summer to work on this. So basically now, if you spin up a trial, that is going to be good till about October, when it is projected that this is going to be general availability. So this is a good time to try out Power Pages, because you can go a little bit longer than that 30-day trial if you want to play with stuff and try things out. If you are going to work on a project, or you're currently working on an existing Power Apps portals project, don't put the brakes on it. Keep on working on it. These tools, these technologies, they're just going to be available when it's GA. You'll be able just to kind of keep on working on your project using these new tools. One thing when you're working on a project, I recommend do it on a sandbox environment or a trial environment. Build up your portal there. There's ways to move that metadata into your production when you're ready. And there are other ALM features and functionalities, and we're going to have some more guidance from Microsoft coming out on that as well. All right, so we're going to talk about the new design studio. So first off, what I'm going to do is we're just going to pop out of the deck, and I'm just going to bring up, this is the one, actually I'm going to bring up I have another environment up and running here. Just move this over. So basically, if I go to make.powerpages.microsoft.com, and fun fact, again, don't quote me on this. Just say you didn't hear it from me, but powerpages.com was actually already taken, and we weren't able to get that domain name yet. We'll see. Anyway, so it's make.powerpages.microsoft.com. When you get here, this is a new interface. Now, before we used to go into Power Apps to build our portals, and you still can do that today for the GA tools, but for Power Pages, we'll go into this new homepage. This is pretty cool because it will show you all of the sites that you've already provisioned on your particular environment. We can change the environment, so we can go to some of the other environments that we're working on, and then we can also provision new portals there. Now, before, when you provisioned a portal, you would have to go into Power Apps and create basically a new portal. Now we just have to go, we create a site, and it works very similarly, a little bit differently. First off, we pick our templates. And like I said, we have some templates coming soon. We have some out already. We could just start with basically the default design template. The cool thing about portals is, whereas when you start with a Canvas app, you're starting with a blank, bare bones, nothing happens app. When you start with a Power Pages site, there's actually a fully working site where you begin to modify that. So I'm just going to choose that template. I can give my site a name. It generates a web address. Of course, we can modify this. What can happen as well eventually is we can create our own custom URL, but that's a little bit later. And then I just hit done. Now, traditionally, This particular process would take 30 to 45 minutes to provision a site. And if it's the first time you're working with, if it's on one of your own environments, you'll still notice it will take a little bit of time because it's loading all of those solutions and metadata in the background. However, if you decide to if you're spinning up a trial and you let Microsoft use one of the existing environments, this is supposed to be a lot faster, like under 90 seconds is the target. I don't think we're quite there yet, but this is part of the process. And then the cool thing is once you provision this as well, if you provision some other templates, it's actually preloaded that metadata as well. So then you'll be able to use those other templates. And then the other cool thing is you'd be able to spin up to 50 portals per environment. Now, I don't know anybody that would want to use 50 portals in a particular environment, but before you were kind of limited, one portal, one Dataverse environment. Now it's up to 50 portals, so you can create a whole bunch. And you notice here I already had quite a few created. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over to, actually, there we go. That was probably about 2 minutes or so. And we have this site that got pre-created. All right, so I'm going to pop over to a different environment here of stuff I created earlier. Excuse me. And here I have, before I dive into editing my site, I do want to talk about, we have what we call this templates hub, which gives you an overview of some of these templates, and there are more coming. And I think I'm allowed to say this, but pretty soon you'll be able to see if this is a Dynamics enabled environment, you'll be able to see all the Dynamics templates here as well. I believe that was in the release notes. If it wasn't, you didn't hear it from me. The other thing is on the Learn Hub, and this is what I was talking about earlier. This is where if you want to learn more about Power Pages, or if there's some specific thing you're looking for, you can actually go into this Learn Hub, and we have here some different things. We have some training videos. We've basically divided up into different areas so you can go in and find the information you're looking for. And basically, connecting to Dataverse, and then I can actually go into the particular thing. And this will take you directly to Microsoft Docs. And within Docs itself, this is, of course, this is where I live every day. We work on this stuff. Actually, you'll see my my picture up there as one of the contributors that work with this and an entire team. And if you have any feedback on the docs, if something's not clear or if something's kind of confusing, or even if you see a mistake or something like that, definitely go in the bottom. You can fill in some feedback on this particular page. I'll get an email and I'll try my best to go in and fix it or try to respond. It's kind of tricky sometimes, but I do appreciate that feedback. Now, going back to the project at hand, let's go back to my home page. And let's get into the meat and potatoes of all this. So I'm going to go in. I have my different sites here. They're all, notice that we actually see a preview of the sites as well. That's kind of nice. We can actually see what our site's going to look like. I could preview it from here, or I can just go directly into the edit. And now we're into the new design studio. So I know a lot of you who maybe took a look at Power Apps portals before might have used the old ADX Studio, what we call the front side editing tools, or we could have used the what we call the version 1 design studio. And you might have found it a little clunky, but this new designer is definitely a lot better. As we're just sort of waiting for some of this to come up, I want to talk a little bit about the different workspaces. So we have this Pages workspace. What that is, the ability to go in and we can add pages, we can design pages, and we'll get into this in a minute. We have our styling workspace, and this is where we can begin to change the color and the theming and the styling. Not quite to the level that Kristine was doing on the presentation with Canvas apps, but definitely we could do a lot here and make some changes. And then we also have the ability to, this will be coming very soon, the ability to upload your own custom CSS file in here if you need changes above and beyond of what's available within the styling workspace. The other thing I want to talk about more is, didn't make any changes here, I'm just going to discard that, is what we call the data workspace. The data workspace is a place where we can work with the Dataverse information. I'm going to actually circle back to that in a minute, but this is where we can go things and add tables and forms directly into our Dataverse environment. And then finally, we have the setup workspace. This is still fairly light at this point, but this is going to increasingly get more and more populated as we get closer to GA. But here's where we can set up some identity providers with authentication. We can set up security. I'll talk briefly about security as well. We can begin to convert these into progressive web apps, and that is a whole topic in itself, but it's a way to make your portal into a mobile application. We have other information here about the site details, admin settings, and really just kind of these are links right now, but more and more we're going to have the ability to do this stuff all within one environment. So for those of you who've worked with portals in the past, maybe found it a little clunky that you're constantly going in and out of different tools to build up your site. The idea here is we can try to stay with one tool as much as possible. So let's quickly pop back into here. We have our site here up and running. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on I'm going to create a new page. So let's create a new page. I'm just going to call this the UK user group. Just give it a name. We're going to add this to the main navigation here, so it's going to appear in that menu. We have standard layouts. We have landing pages, other things like that. We could create custom layouts. I don't have any custom layouts here yet. This is, again, a little bit beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about today, but I'm just going to pick a standard layout. I'm going to hit add. And then basically we have this blank canvas, and this is a web page that we can start working with. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's just give it a title. So I'm going to add a text here, and I'm going to change this to a title, and we're going to change the color, make that bold, change the color to something a little bit darker, and then I'm going to go and like center that. So I can begin to design and change my site here. Let's add a spacer. Added that spacer here, and then I'm going to add actually going to add a different a new section here. I'm going to add a 2-column section, and we could add some text. So again, just gonna put here's some text, and this is just static content. What I could also do is I can inject things like content snippets in here and that other things like that. On this side, I can let's add an image, for example. I can just pick one of these existing images. Oh, we have a question? Oh, okay, no worries. If you have a question, like raise your hand, come off mute. I'm more than happy if there's something that's kind of confusing.
Nick, I do have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, because when I see what is on the screen right now, it looks like we are in SharePoint. And I guess my question is, what would you say is the difference between the Power Page and a SharePoint site? Because I'm used to creating sites in SharePoint, and it looks similar.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, up until this point, everything I'm doing, you're absolutely right. You could do in SharePoint, you could do in like WordPress or Wix or some of these other tools. You could even create this site in using Notepad and HTML if you're really good at HTML and CSS and all of that kind of stuff. So this is a great lead into what Power Pages is the real power about. So I've created a page here. I can go and preview that, and you're absolutely right. This could look exactly the same as any other website. Kind of tool here. This is like a really horrible page. It's really basic. I know you've just been razzled and dazzled with all the stuff Kristine showed, but basically this is a bare bones site, and we have the links here, and also we have authentication. We'll get into that. So where's the power in this? So what I can do is if I go into the data workspace. So let's take a step back. With the Power Pages, its biggest feature is the ability to interact with Dataverse data. So if you were to take a Dataverse table and you needed to write a website to show that information, let's say using .NET or some other tools like Ruby on Rails, you'd have to write the handlers to talk to the Dataverse Web API or those other features to pull the data and then write the controls to display it. So what I can do here is I can actually create a brand new table, and this will create the brand new table in Dataverse directly. Now, the one thing that I do want to mention is, because this is the feedback, when I first saw this as well, I thought, well, this is pretty cool, but I want to actually add this to a solution. That's not there yet. So what's happening now is creating all these assets as part of the default solution. But I know that is something that will eventually be coming, that we can add these new tables and views and forms and things to a solution. So here I can begin to add, add my tables, add my new view, add my columns, my fields, or whatnot to my table. I've actually have a table created here already. I built a sample site for scholarships. So I have this tool here, and I've got some data in here. For those of you who've worked with Dataverse for Teams, you probably find this very familiar. It's very similar to the same interface for creating tables within the Dataverse for Teams is the same as it is within Power Pages. So I can do the same thing. I can begin to add a new column. I give it a display name. I'm just going to test for now what my data type is. Files are here now. This is a new thing that was just released a week or two ago. Check that out so we can upload files and portal pages. So we can add these new columns here, and I can actually fill in some sample data. Now, the thing is, when we're going to create things on our Dataverse page, our Power Pages page, we're going to need to build some foundation. Now, for all of you who worked with Dataverse, know that by default, there's always something called like views and forms. So I can go and create a new view, or I can modify an existing view. And again, these are tools that if you worked with model-driven apps, you're very familiar with. So I'm just going to add another column here. Let's add the application deadline and maybe add a description here. And same thing as before, I can move my columns around. And like I said, these are the same tools that you would use while building a model-driven app. I'm going to move that to the right. So we have all of this here. We have the dates. Actually, I'll remove created on. I'm going to remove that. And we can begin to adjust that. And of course, this being a Dataverse view, we have the other things. We can actually do some sorting. We can add different filters. And this really is the foundation of what we'll use on our portal eventually. So yeah, it's very, very consistent. And then basically I can just do the same thing. I can save this particular view. We have that here. If I go back, we also have forms. Now this is where it gets a little awkward, to say the least, is we can create new forms here. So I've already created one here for the website for a scholarship form. And again, this goes into the model-driven app tool set. Again, shared components across the entire Power Platform. And this is where I can begin to design the page. Now, this particular form, I've added the timeline here. I have the description, I have the title, and I can begin to go the same thing as add fields. Let's say we're going to move the application deadline onto this form as well. We have this, and I can actually begin to change some of the properties, hiding different things, changing the column width, the field width, all of the types of stuff that if we're working with model-driven apps, we're fairly used to. The problem is this kind of makes it a little confusing to brand new makers who have had no experience in Dataverse, because they're like, wow, these seem like pretty powerful tools. Is this exactly how it's going to be on the portal? This is the thing to, just sort of kind of consider. So anyways, within the data workspace, for all intents and purposes, what we've done is we've created a table. I've modified a table, and with that table, I've added some. We can add some data here if we'd like. We've added some views, and we've added some forms. So at this point, everything that we're doing hasn't even touched Power Pages yet. This is model-driven app kind of 101 for building these types of things. But the thing is, these assets come into play when we're beginning to expand the power of our Power Pages site. So I'm going to go back into my Pages workspace. where I created this very simple page, the same as I could in, you know, like I said, in SharePoint or WordPress or whatever else. I'm just create a new page here. I'm going to call that scholarships. Just because I want to display that. I'm going to, again, pick a standard layout. Now, this time, what I'm going to do is, well, first off, let's just add a title just to make sure. You know, I'll just call this available scholarships. Scholar. Of course, people are watching and my spelling is probably all over the map. Here we go. And if it seems weird, I can just tell you it's the Canadian spelling. But anyways, we're all good. I'm just going to center that. We have that there. And now what I'm going to do is now I can make some other adjustments here. I'm going to change the padding a little bit just to make this a little bit more condensed. Let's do the margins as well there. And then I'm going to add just a 1-column section. Actually, I want to add a spacer in between that too. We've added that. And now I'm going to be able to add something called a list. We have different components here. We have a form, an iframe, Power BI, images, videos, a few others, but I'm going to add a list here. So with this list, this is where we're beginning to get into the special sauce, so to speak, of Power Pages. I can go in and I'm going to pick my scholarship table. That was the one that was created. And then for my data verse views, I'm going to choose active scholarships. And we can name this on this end anything we want. So active scholarships is fine. That's all well and good. I'm going to click OK. And now we have this list component on our particular page. Actually, I want to pick the, no, that's all fine. We have the name. Interesting. I thought I changed that view. But anyways, we have here showing me no records to display. So literally, that just took me a few clicks. I was able to create a page. I was able to create a component that's tying back into a Dataverse table. If I had to write this in ASPX.NET or some other language, I'd be here for at least a day or two trying to wire that all together. Believe me, I have done that in the past. I've created, you know, web pages, you know, on custom websites to talk to. Back in those days, it was dynamic CRM, but effectively it was a Dataverse database. Now, interesting thing though, if I hit preview, what I'm going to do is going to launch this particular site. And I have my scholarships and boom, I get a message right away. And I'm just going to increase the size of that. And it says, you don't have permission to view these records. This is a good thing. We don't want our Dataverse information just to be willy-nilly exposed out into the wild universe, right? So by default, Power Pages has security enabled, so you're not able to view data. But of course, we want to be able to show the available scholarships to our audience on our portal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop back into my Power Pages Design Studio. I'm just going to click the tab here. And again, I'm going to go in this form, and here I have this thing called permissions. So what I can do is I can click on the permissions, and this is where I can define what's called table permissions. And this is where we would be able to, you know, configure this thing for able to view the data. So I'm going to click on the new permission, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to just call this public access to scholarships. Here's my table. I'm going to give it global access, but you know, we can have other things here in terms of contact if there's a relationship, account access, self access. So there's different access types here for now, and I'm just going to give it read permission. So far, all I have done is created the permission itself, but really want to take that one step further. Who are we going to give this access to? And this is where we're going to add some what we call web roles. And I'm just going to pick both anonymous users, so those are users that have not logged in, as well as authenticated users, and those are users that have logged into the portal or to the site. So I'm still learning the new naming conventions as well. So I've created this table permission, which means everybody in the world should be able to view that list. And now I'm going to go into preview. Let's go and look at the desktop again. It's refreshing. You see the little circle here. And boom, now we have our listing of Dataverse data visible on a public website tying directly back to my Dataverse. So that goes back to the question, okay, what's the real benefit of Power Pages versus some of these other things like a Wix or WordPress or, I know we can do some certain things with SharePoint as well in terms of data, but this is really the meat and potatoes of it, is we can actually surface Dataverse information. Now, we can do more than just read-only information. Maybe we want to add new information or we want to edit this information. This is where we can begin to drill down and add some more power to our portals as well. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to create basically a page where we can edit the existing scholarship information. So I'm going to add a new page. I'm going to add that as a sub page. And that's the great thing about Pages Workspace is we can work with the hierarchy, the taxonomy of those pages. So I'm just going to do that. Again, I'm just going to pick, let's give it a name, scholarship details. And I'm going to start from a blank layout. And again, we could create custom layouts if we want things to look a little bit differently. Again, going a little bit above and beyond. And on this particular page, I'm actually going to now choose a form. Now this form, again, is linking back to the Dataverse form that we created earlier. So I'm going to click on New Form here. Again, I'm going to pick my scholarship table. And if we recall, we worked on that website form. And again, this is where we're picking that model-driven app form that we use those tools to create. And again, I can give this and again, name it here how I want. This is how it's going to be rendered on the page. And then I'm just going to click OK. And now we have this form. Now, the problem is if I just have this form here, I have the scholarship, the application date, the description, we have the notes here, we have a CAPTCHA if we're editing that data. For now, I find that with CAPTCHAs are great. It's great for security. But what happens is I always kind of mistype them. So I'm just going to shut that off for now. And then on submit, we can just say, have it display a message, or we can do a few different things. But for now, we're just going to leave that. Now, here's part of the issue, though. If I just try to, if I'm going to change actually the form itself, what's the action? If I check on data, what I want to do is I want to update an existing record. We have it create a new record or update. Because we want to give the editing capabilities, we want to update an existing record. So I'm going to choose that. And now the problem is a couple things. If I try to go into this particular page, if I just go preview now, go to desktop, I'm going to get an error message for a couple things. First off, it's not going to know what Dataverse record to show. And so it's going to give me the record you're looking for can't be found. And then also with our table permissions, I'm not going to be able to make any edits with it either because I don't have the ability to write. So we need to fix that. So I'm going to go back into my scholarship list records here. And this is where we had the list. And this is where I can actually begin to configure a few other things. So I'm going to click on that list and I'm going to go into the details here. And under my data, I'm going to choose something like view details. I'm going to turn that on. And then what's my target type? It can be a form or a web page. We've already created that web page in that form. And I'm going to look at scholarship details. So I'm linking it here. And I could do other things like, edit records, delete records, create a new record. For now, I'm just going to click here, click OK. And the other thing I'm going to do too is let's just, we can actually choose, I'm going to pick the scholarships view. So we have a couple different views as well. I'm just going to click OK. We've now updated this page. The other thing I want to do is I don't want users necessarily navigating directly to this page, to the menu. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to actually move that to other pages. So that means it's going to still be a page, but we're not going to be able to see it in the menu. That's all good. And now let's just hit preview. And so by doing this, we're going to go back to our scholarship page. So see here we have our active scholarships, or I could go to that other different view here. So we could swap our views too. depending on what we're going to do. We have the description. Notice now we have a hyperlink. And so with that hyperlink, I can actually click on that. And because we wired that up in our list view, it's now showing this information in the whole form. But notice I can't edit it. And I meant this to be a form where I could edit. Well, a couple things is because I don't have those table permissions. So what I need to do is I need to go back and let's actually change the, let's go to the scholarship details page here where I have my form. And I'm going to go click on permissions. And there's our public access where everybody does. I'm going to click on a new table permission. And I'm going to be able to say, I'm going to call this edit scholarship. So pick my table, and here I'm just going to leave it as global access because we can do some other fancy linking with the lookups and whatever. And I want to be able to read or write. So we'll just we have that. But this time in terms of the roles, I am just going to choose authenticated users only. So only users that have had the ability to log into my portal are going to be able to edit that information. So I've saved this. And now if I go back and do another preview here, actually what I'll do is I'll go to my home page. Go. And from here, I'm just going to hit preview, desktop. And we see here, I don't know if you can see it, it's spinning. And here's my scholarships. I'm going to click on that. Remember, we have the ability to view scholarships. I'm going to drill down. However, I still don't have the ability to edit this. Remember, because I'm not logged in yet, because we're only going to do authenticated users. So now what we need to do in order to sign in, there's a couple things is if I hit on that sign up button, we could actually, if I had a login and username already, I'd be able to sign in using kind of the out of the box local authentication. I also have the ability to register, meaning we're allowing new users to register with the site, or we could also redeem an invitation, basically send out our users an invitation. Now, one thing I want to point out is a Power Pages like user that signs in here, they need to have a corresponding contact in Dataverse. So for those of you who've used Dynamic CRM before, know that Dataverse has an out-of-the-box table called contacts. So how do we do that? This is where we still need to go into the existing Power Apps Portals portal management app. So we can access that from here. I'm going to click on the little ellipses. I'm going to go into portal management. And this is going to bring up, and it actually even says Microsoft Dynamics 365 at the top, which is hilarious. But this is the portal management app. I'm going to increase the size so you're able to see it a little bit better here. And if you've seen one, as we all know, if you've seen one model-driven app, you've seen them all. They all look exactly the same. They have their side panel here, and they have their forms and everything like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into security, and I'm going to look at contacts. And here I have my listing of some contacts, some out of the box. Actually, there's just myself is here. That's fine. What I can do is add a new contact. I'm just going to call this guy, call him Jim. So let's say Jim wants access to my portal. And I'm just going to say, sure, Jim, no problem. What's your email address? And I'll just say jim@task.com for now. And basically what I can do here is I'm going to create this contact record. And of course, you might already have contacts in your Dataverse. You know, if you're using Dynamics 365 or for other reasons, we have this name here. I'm going to create this invitation. And typically what we do, there is a bunch of what we call classic workflows that are available to send this invitation on behalf of us. Or we could use Power Automate. Power Automate to me is a much better tool for this type of thing. We go in the advanced, we have this invitation code. I don't have the time to really go through or write a flow. I guess most of you should know how to do Power Automate, but we could go in and I get this invitation code. I now go back to the portal. I'm going to go redeem invitation. I'm going to put this in and hit register. And here's Jim. There's his email address. I'm just going to put that in, and I'm just going to create a password. This might not even work because it's probably not too weak. Yeah, it needs to be at least 8 characters. So let me try this again. Let's get just strong password. No thanks. Let's not do that. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. And register. All right, let's try one more time. I'm never good at guessing passwords. Here we go. Sorry, all that to say is now I've created that login, and yeah, password 123. That's what I need to be doing. So here I filled in this information. Like, this is Jim's profile. So now him as a user can modify his own profile that will update his own Dataverse information. So that's a bit of an extra thing. Now remember, Jim is, we set up the web role for authenticated users. So now if I go back to scholarships, if I go into American Architect Scholarship here, now we actually have the ability to edit the information. I'm going to change the application date. Let's just move that back about a month. We can add other notes here and things like that. I thought I turned off the CAPTCHA, but maybe I didn't. And it's just trying to, let's get a new image. So let's just save that. And adding notes and attachments, that's again a whole other conversation. And then S8B, let's just submit this. And then the submission completed successfully. If I now look at the scholarships, we'll see that if I go into, actually, let me go into this date. We see the application date has been updated and moved back just by Jim Glynn going in. Now, notice I did kind of use that out of the box standard authentication. In a production instance, what you should be using is, if I go to setup, we can actually set up different identity providers here. Ideally, you should be using a third-party authentication, something like Azure Active Directory B2C, or some of these other ones, and then tying that in. And there's a pretty good wizards involved in here to help you set that up, to make your authentication provider link to a different identity provider. But ultimately, at the end of the day, most of these things are pretty much operate the same. So I hopefully that answered the question of what's the big what are the sort of the features, or what can Power Pages provide over something else beyond some of these other tools. So a few things basically to reiterate, really the fact that we can tie into Dataverse and show lists of data, the ability to create new records, edit data, and work with these different things. Now, I've just scratched the surface. There's a lot more we can do. If we want to format the data a certain way, we could create we could create our own custom templates. We could use a language called Liquid to update and display the information a certain way. If you're a developer and you need to actually go a lot deeper than this, what you can do is you can work with your own templates and use something called the Portals Web API. To do this, it's pretty cool. You can use Visual Studio for this, and I'm actually in Visual Studio right now. I'm actually using VS Code, using the Power Apps command line interface. I'm just going to clear the screen here. And what I can do is, here I have command to download my portal. So I could just type, again, learning these commands is pretty straightforward. There's not many. You can load these tools, and what happens is I'm actually going out, I'm downloading all of that portal configuration locally to my own machine here. That's going out doing that. And then once it's done there, then I could actually tie that into my own, whether it's GitHub or Azure DevOps, and begin to grab all of this configuration and move that into my pipelines. So it's downloading a bunch of information. And then here, when that's all downloaded, yeah, the cool thing is not only you can do version control, but this is a way that you can move your configuration from one Dataverse environment to another. And there's something called deployment profiles, so you can set up different things as we move the information. So here, if I wanted to go through and like update the home page, for example, so here's the home page. I want to, I'll just go in the introduction section, which is in H2. I'm just going to call this a quick hello world. Just made a change here. I'm going to save this. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to upload that. And what that is going to do, it's going to just upload those changes I made in Visual Studio Code. Looking at the manifests, it's uploaded all that successfully. It's updating the table here. And now if I go back into my portal management app here, whichever, yeah, this one, go into my home page. Do a quick sync. And what this sync does, it syncs with the backend, the portal metadata, which again is stored in Dataverse. And I'm just looking at the questions here. Very nice. So you can do proper version control, deployment, no solution export needed anymore. This is a little bit different than, this will eventually someday be solution aware. At this point, you'll still, if you made changes to Dataverse, you'd still need to move those with a solution. So it's still kind of a two-part thing. You move your Dataverse configuration with a solution, but then the rest of that portal metadata is going to be, you can move it with this. But again, that eventually will also be solution aware. So it's just a matter of moving solutions from one site to another. Hopefully, David, that answered that question. Portals, pages, leaps and bounds. Twitter licensing being mentioned, changed. Licensing. I'm going to defer that because, again, I don't want to get in trouble. But I would just basically say keep your eyes peeled for announcements there. The PAC portal upload handle deleted pages. Oh, that's a great question because I actually just updated the topic, which should be published in the next few days. Basically, it will so if you delete pages or you delete assets using the Design Studio or within the portal management app or even within this tool here, then yes, what it will do, it will also delete those assets in your destination environment. But in order for you to do that, you need to first make sure that you upload, if you make changes here, upload that back to your source portal. Also, and then once it's updated there, go through the process of downloading it. And that is going to update this manifest file. And this manifest file will list the things that have been deleted. And then as you push that to your target environment, then it should delete all of those assets as well. So there is some more guidance coming on that particular question. That question has come up a bit in the last week or two. In terms of licensing, which package does Power Pages come in? So basically, I'm going to show you, I do have a slide on licensing. I'm going to show you how licensing works today. So here we go. And again, this is today. This is the Power Apps Portals licensing. This is July 2022. Basically, you get an allocation, and you can buy different allocations in terms of Portals login. You also have page views as well, but it's really about the logged in users that people are always most concerned about. And then basically, you have that ticket provides 24-hour access. So think of it like you're working the booth at Disneyland. Your boss is giving you 100 tickets. You hand those out. The person who gets that ticket, that's good for the day. They can come in and out of the park, meaning they can log in and log out of the portal, any they want in a 24-hour period. After that 24 hours is up, then they need a brand new ticket again. So when you first look at this, it's like, okay, that makes sense. But then when you start doing the math, because each login, when you look at licensing, depending on the licensing, goes anywhere from, I think, what, 70 cents up to $2, depending on the volume. Obviously, the more you buy, the less expensive it gets. Still, let's just say if it's $1, all of a sudden, if you have let's say 1,000 members in your that need to log into the portal at least once a month, then you're looking at $1,000 per month. If they have to log in, let's say every day, let's say half of your members have to log in, like let's say, every business day to check something or to do something, you're looking at 500 times $1 times 20. You're looking at $2,000 right there, or 20,000, depending on how the math goes. So portals gets prohibitively expensive very quickly on the current licensing model. Obviously, the more you have, the less price it has. A lot of times you might not have as many people. My unofficial don't tell my boss guidance is always talk to your Microsoft rep, because it's like buying a car. Don't pay retail for Power Apps portals, logins, and page views. Always negotiate. There's always room for negotiation with your Microsoft sales reps. So that's all I can. That's probably, I might even said too much already. That's all I can say right now. But hopefully that kind of clears up. So this is for external users. If you have internal users, your Power Apps per user license covers your portal access. Your Power Apps per app license also covers your portal access for your internal users. So if you decide to use Power Pages to build an HR site or to build a site for your folks that are working your factory, the Power Apps or per user licenses will cover those folks. It's really the external users where you need to make sure that you have those external portal logins and page view licensing. So anyways, hopefully that answers the question now. I wish I could give you slightly different news about licensing, but right now I cannot. Anytime licensing comes up, I've been explicitly told, just shut up.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. The other thing, shameless self-promotion. If you want to learn more about portals, I am holding a full day workshop. This is a paid thing. But if you're interested and you have some training money to spend, join me in Stockholm on September 23rd. I'm doing a full day workshop. Go to the Nordic Summit site for details on how to sign up for that. I'd be more than happy to see you there. And then we'll dive in a lot deeper into this stuff. We'll get into a little bit into Visual Studio Code. We'll go through all the other things, and definitely I can teach you a lot more than what I could just show you in the hour that I had. And I know that we're running tight on time. And again, I just want to say thank you to all the sponsors. And I also just want to open it up for questions as well. Hopefully I've been staying on top of it. But if there's any other questions, more than happy, pop off mute or raise your hands or do in the chat window, whatever works best for you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for that great presentation. Two great presentations there. So yeah, really informative, as I think we all knew they would be. So yeah, I think bang on the button time-wise. I think we've got 2 minutes. But I suppose, as Nick has kindly said, he'll hang around for any questions. I'm sure Kristine's happy to hang around. If you don't have any, feel free to jump off. Thank you very much for joining. I've just dropped in a link to a feedback form. So if everybody could take 2 minutes out before they dart off to have their evening meal and just give us some feedback, that'd be fantastic. And anybody with any burning questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask Nick or Kristine. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully you found that as useful as I did. And we look forward to welcoming you all to next month's user group. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan, for being the host and corralling everybody and everything. That was really helpful.
No, not a problem. Not a problem.
Thanks.
It's always more fun being the host when it's face to face, isn't it? And it involves a beer or two and a slice of pizza. But so no, it's good. So I don't think there's any questions, but if anyone does have any questions, feel free to drop in the Teams chat, send me an email. I'm sure hopefully you'll all be connecting to Kristine and Nick on LinkedIn if you're not already. And but yeah, I think we'll have to call that a wrap, guys. So thank you everyone for joining.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Nick.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kristine. Really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Damien. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us. It's been awesome. Sorry I didn't make it to Manchester. I promise I will next time.
Yeah, me too.
So you keep threatening.
I know, and I'm sure Nick will walk over to Manchester as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Lovely to see you both. See you again soon, hopefully.
Thank you,
for sure.
Cheryl.
Oh,
Hi,
yeah,
Cheryl.
Cheryl's here. That's awesome. Yeah, I
Cheryl.
saw her sneak in the back.
I think a few people are starting to drop off now, so hopefully we're not going to miss any questions. But I'll keep an eye on anyway, and if you do get any questions, I'll forward them over to you.
Yeah, in typical Microsoft fashion, I do have to hop off to another call right now. So,
yeah, no problem, Nick. Thank you.
No problem. Talk to you guys later.
Excellent. Cheers,
Nice
Nick.
to see
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, Nick.
Bye.
Kristine, thank you very much. Very good. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you very soon.
Yeah, definitely. Have a lovely evening, everyone.
You too.
And
Good night.
see you later. Time for pizza. Drop the microphone from the excitement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Right. Have a good
Bye.
night. See you later,
See you
guys.
soon.
Bye now.
Bye.